is Carol Forgash. I have an MSW. I'm licensed in the state of New York, and I've been involved with therapy work for about 40 years and involved with HAP since about 1998. Well, I met Francine for the first time at my level 2 training. My first training was with a guy from Australia who was soloing for the first time and another trainer. And the second time I wanted to go right locally in New York because I heard that Francine was coming to town to do the training. And I already knew enough EMDR practitioners here on Long Island to know that you wanted to hear a really top training. There, everybody was good, but here's the founder. Why not go to hear the founder? And she was outrageously funny. And for me, humor always makes learning move so easily. It oils the wheels. And she would tell stories just on herself, but also some beautiful stories and show videos of how people were really doing so well because of EMDR. And she kept stressing that we'll keep learning and we'll keep growing and it'll become easy for us, even though it seems so different, because you're not supposed to be asking questions and mirroring back and doing all the other psychotherapeutic things to do. You just listen, and at the appropriate time, you add in the EMDR protocol. But she stressed over and over again how we had to know our stuff diagnostically and how we had to really keep striving and keep learning, not just about EMDR, but about trauma in general. And Francine Shapiro always said, pay it forward. Not just pay it back, but pay it forward and keep including people in your ideas of how to be helpful and how to include more people in helping you be helpful. And I think that's one thing she's, aside from developing this brilliant kind of therapy, it's her philosophy that started HAP. After the Oklahoma City bombing, she's the one who actually put it together after getting the work done and seeing what people could really accomplish together. She formed a little group together, a little board, and boom, we've been off and running ever since. For me, the story of actual doing a good deal of concentrated work started with 9/11. We were doing telephone work, getting together, trying to form committees, trying to find out what New York City needs. And what New York City needed, as it turned out, was help for the first responders. And so I was lucky that I had contacts with the Mental Health Association of Suffolk County, and they agreed to be our call central, that if anybody called in, they would get free treatment. And in Suffolk County, which was my county, and also Nassau County cooperated, I think so, agencies in New York City, wherever any of us had contacts, we try to apply them as quickly as possible. I was able to get a free public service announcement on television, which they probably showed at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, but people called from that. So we also had to get together groups of therapists who were willing to see people pro bono. And there are laws in New York State and New Jersey and Connecticut, all those areas, about how long you could see a person. So we figured out we could see people at least 5 times and members of their family. And then they would either be finished, because EMDR can be so quick, or they would be passed on to other people. Another thing that we did was we got training for therapists in these newer EMDR therapies for rapid intervention right after a trauma. And that was amazing. We hosted some trainings here, so we educated and supported our own already trained therapists. And there were also EMDR training in the works. And we ended up, I don't know that we kept such great stats in those days, but between New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, we treated a large number of people. Into 2 years later, people were still coming in. And it was a horrible reason to get so involved, but it turned out to do some really wonderful things for people. And so after 9/11, things just started to radiate out, and we started to develop this concept of the TRN, the Trauma Recovery Networks. Because one thing we found out the hard way, you can't walk into the New York City mayor's office after a trauma like 9/11 and say, hey, I got 50 therapists who are going to treat folks for nothing. And he's going to say, and who are you? So the idea was that instead of being a Band-Aid culture, we needed to be a proactive culture where we involved ourselves with local organizations that might be helpful in a crisis. And if they knew who we were and that we were a credible organization, they might call on us. Otherwise, you're going to be told out the door. So that movement started, and I didn't do any direct work with the TRNs, but I kind of cheered them on. And we tried through the board where I was on the board by then. So we tried to help them form all over the country so that we would be prepared in advance. I was asked to go to Thailand and see how one of our programs was going there after the big tsunami that hit Thailand, India, Indonesia. And I'm driving to a place where I'm going to stay with an English woman who was there to help as well. And we were seeing boats in the middle of the road 5 miles from the beach. One picture that I always retain is that man who told me that he was a sinner because he hadn't saved his wife and had stopped eating and drinking. When he was all done, not only did he give me a high five, but with an almost toothless mouth, gave me this enormous grin. He was feeling so good and was so happy, and he just went, wow, it just exploded from him. And so I tell his story whenever I do any kind of training or speaking about HAP and what it can do is that just that one little simple picture of a person just smiling, sitting in poverty, had enough to eat if he wanted it, could get back on his fishing boat if he wanted to, and wanted to smile again. Because before that, life was over for him. That was the end of the road. Not because he was physically ill, but he was going to starve himself to death. And now he's smiling and life is good again. I want a TR. If I had a fairy godmother or magic pixie dust or something, I would want to be able to have every community of a reasonable size have access to the work of a TRN, will be part of a TRN. So that Sandy Hook in Connecticut happened a few years ago when all those children were killed. One of the therapists in the community had happened to have treated somebody there before. And they told the principal of the school, who enabled this person to come in with some HAP people and do work immediately with the families of those children and their siblings and the parents. So that's the kind of thing. And God forbid we have these kinds of things, but we will sooner or later somewhere, either fires or man-made disasters or whatever, human-made disasters. So if I had that kind of money and power, I would want TRNs to be carpeted across the entire country. There was a song from the 70s about overall waterfalling generations. Over each ridge is a new waterfall, keeps spilling over. And that's us. And there's a hopefully inexhaustible source of the water that we need, which is money and time and dedication. And as long as we can still enthuse people about these things, I think we'll be okay. I think we're in, and the other thing is that we're liable to be in for rough times for a number of reasons, from climate change to everything else. And we really need to be able to provide enough therapists, because there are shortages of therapists, and we may need them even more. I mean, the fire of the scope of the one in LA is really something we have not dealt with before. And how can we be ready to do that kind of work means we have to provide the training for people. And to provide that kind of training in that kind of huge numbers, we need support. And I think if we can inspire people to help us, it would be magnificent. I have to say also that I am so proud of this organization. I mean, they really allowed me to blossom in a number of ways. And you get to travel. And it's not always under the easiest of circumstances, but you get to travel and learn about people in a very unvarnished way because you're there where they are. And sometimes that's a pretty rough place. But there's always such good camaraderie and such wonderful feedback and learning that we do from each other. And I'm so proud to have been associated for so long with this organization.